G'day folks, there is so much noise and too much spin coming out of Canberra and Martin Place right now. That's why I want to distill the headlines and make sense of the mess we find ourselves in this week, because we're also witnessing an historic collapse of expert credibility. Let's look at the rate hike this week at 4.35%. It's the third hike so far this year, as we know, and it has officially deleted every single rate cut from 2025. Australia is now the global outlier. While the rest of the developed world is holding or preparing to cut, we are the only Western nation forced into a hiking cycle. Why? Well, because the RBA has made an embarrassing backflip. They were the only ones to start a cutting cycle last year, a move economists like Warren Hogan and Christopher Joy warned was a major mistake. Now, Governor Bullock is admitting that inflation was rising well before this conflict even started, but they misread the data, they went early, and now we are back in this hiking cycle. And the pain, well, it doesn't look over just yet. Bond and equity traders are already factoring in another rate rise by September, and they've also just lowered their chance of what would have been a fifth rate hike, down from 80% down to 65%, but the direction of travel is quite clear. Meanwhile, we have this blame game going on in full swing. We have the RBA raising concerns about government spending and the forthcoming budget that may not contain spending enough. On the other side of the equation, we have Treasurer Jim Chalmers. He's taking credit for last year's 3 rate cuts and saying this Iran conflict is entirely to blame for this latest rate hiking cycle. It is an absolute circus. It's no wonder why the Demos AU Trust Tracker, which tracks trust in our national institutions, shows the RBA at a paltry reading of plus 17 and the House of Representatives in negative territory -1. To put that in some context, the score above 50 is the benchmark for being considered generally trustworthy, and anything below 50 means the majority of the public view you with active skepticism. So being at -1% for the House of Representatives means that Australians have lost total trust in our government representatives. Australians seem to be done with expert opinion because the experts are acting like kids in the schoolyard, while the mortgage holders are right now footing the bill. While the RBA and the Treasurer continue to bicker, so many are still trying to get a better read on what's coming next. CEOs across a range of industries this week have warned that Australians are under real pressure. Anthony Miller, the CEO of Westpac, has said it clearly that the burden on Aussie household budgets is real. And if you want to understand why we're seeing everything feel so heavy on the ground right now, you only have to look at these 3 key survey metrics. The ANZ Roy Morgan Consumer Confidence Survey is currently sitting at 67.2. It's the 7th lowest reading in its 50-year history of the index. Sentiment is lower than during the GFC and the early 90s recession. Also, the Westpac Melbourne Institute Consumer Sentiment Survey current score is sitting at 80.1. That's a 12.5% collapse that we've seen in the last month alone, and we are back at 2020 COVID lockdown levels of pessimism. Also, the NAB Consumer Stress Index current score 59.1. It's a 10-year high in household financial stress, driven by essential items such as groceries, utilities, and fuel. Interestingly, only 15% of Australians believe right now is a time to buy a major household item. And that leads us into the property market, where Sydney clearance rate has been pegged below 40% for 5 straight weeks. Last week, we saw 1,133 properties scheduled for auction and just 176 actually sold under the hammer. That's a 15% strike rate, and it reflects the hesitation, the pause, and the total recalibration that we're seeing right across the market right now. Now, another thing that we hear in our market is that the more affluent buyers can absorb these rate increases, but the data is not showing that at all. In fact, the high-priced homes in each suburb around the Sydney market right now are seeing the fastest price declines in this cycle. Totality shows a 3.3% drop in the last 3 months for Sydney's more expensive assets, but ask any agent in Sydney right now and they will tell you that feels more like a 5 to 10% deduction that we're seeing in play. It's the necessity market, those properties up to $2 million, which are holding quite well, but it's the top end of the market where we're seeing that real shift occurring. Now, we also head into the federal budget next week on May 12th, and remember this in our view, that May will be the month of acceptance. Consumers, well, they are outsmarting and outmanoeuvring the RBA data well ahead of the play. They're not waiting for the headlines anymore. What they're doing is they're reading the play which is occurring on the streets. They're attending our open homes, they're seeing the auctions, and they're judging for themselves. Now, you can make an educated view with your own eyes. That's very important right now. Not all the headline noise that's in the media. This is a market where the pragmatists are now in play. Those who have accepted reality, they've adjusted course, whether or not they are buying or selling, but they are now moving on with life. Yes, this is a weaker market cycle, but these markets, they find the floor very quickly, and opportunity will continue to improve and engagement will follow. So don't sit idle waiting for the experts who continually misread the play. Make your own plans and move with the pragmatists. So much noise is out there, it's all at the top though, but the opportunity is right here on the street right now, and we should see May trading conditions slowly improve. Now, that's the word for this week, folks. We've got lots of amazing properties open for inspection, and we look forward to seeing you out and about, and I'll catch you all next week.